Now I am going to explain the lesson line by line. The Address by Marga Minko. This short story is a poignant account of a daughter who goes in search of her mother's belongings after the war in Holland. Now, this short story is a poignant means sad, painful account of a daughter who goes in search of her mother's belongings, objects which belong to her mother after the war in Holland. When she finds them, the objects evoke memories of her earlier life. When she finds those objects, she is reminded of the earlier memories. However, she decides to leave them all behind and resolves to move on. However, for some reasons, she decides to leave them behind and decides to move on. "Do you still know me?" I asked. The woman looked at me searchingly. She had opened the door a chink. I came closer and stood on the step. Now, the author or the visitor, she went to a house, to an address, and when someone opened the door, a woman opened the door and she asked, "Do you still know me?" That is, "Do you still remember me?" The woman inside, the woman who opened the door, she looked at her searchingly. She had opened the door a chink. She had opened the door very little. And the visitor, she came closer to the door. She went up the step and went closer so that the woman could recognize her. "No, I don't know you." The woman inside the house said, "No, she does not know her. I am Mrs. S.'s daughter." Now, to help her remember, the visitor tells her mother's name. She says, "I am Mrs. S.'s daughter." She held her hand on the door as though she wanted to prevent it opening any further. The woman inside the house, the woman who opened the door, she held the door as if she did not want to open the door. She was preventing it from opening. Her face gave absolutely no sign of recognition. She was looking very blankly at the visitor, giving no symptom, no sign of her recognition. She kept staring at me in silence. Quietly, she kept staring at her as if trying to remember her. Perhaps I was mistaken, I thought. The visitor, she thought that probably she was mistaken. She's come to the wrong address. Perhaps it isn't her. So she says, she thinks that maybe it is not the woman whom I had come to see. So she's some other woman. I had seen her only once, fleetingly. The visitor had seen the woman for a very short time. She had only glanced at her. And that was years ago. And that too was years ago. So probably she had come to the wrong person. It was most probable that I had rung the wrong bell. So the visitor feels that maybe she has rung the wrong bell. The woman let go of the door and stepped to the side. Now the woman also was looking at the visitor. She also must have realized that the visitor is almost convinced that she has come to the wrong address. So she became careless and so she left the door and the door swung open. She was wearing my mother's green knitted cardigan. The visitor now observed when the door opened that the woman inside the house was wearing a green knitted cardigan which belonged to her mother. The wooden buttons were rather pale from washing. The cardigan had been worn quite frequently and washed, because of which the wooden buttons had become pale. She saw that I was looking at the cardigan and half hid herself again behind the door. Now, when the woman who opened the door saw that the visitor was looking at her cardigan, she immediately realized that now she would have recognized her. So, on impulse, she immediately hid behind the door again and closed the door. But I knew now that I was right. But now the visitor was sure that she had come to the right address. She had come to visit this lady only. "Well, you knew my mother?" I asked. Now she was sure that she was at the right address, so she asked her, "Well, you knew my mother. Have you come back?" said the woman. I thought that no one had come back. Now she said she did not deny recognizing her. She only asked her, "Have you come back?" It was a rhetorical question. Rhetorical question means when she was seeing that she was standing outside, obviously she knew that she had come back. But rhetorical questions need no answers, they are just spoken out of habit and situations. So she just said, "Have you come back?" I thought no one had come back. This must have been her desire that no one comes back. Now she was not very happy to see her back. Only me. The visitor said, "Only me, only she had come back." A door opened and closed in the passage behind her. A musty smell emerged. Now, behind the woman, a door opened and a musty smell, an unpleasant smell emerged, came from there. "I regret I cannot do anything for you." The woman, she said, "I'm sorry, I cannot do anything for you. I've come here specially on the train. I wanted to talk to you for a moment." The visitor said that she had come from a faraway place. She had come by train. She wanted only to talk to her for some time. "It is not convenient for me now," said the woman. "I can't see you another time." So the woman was very rude. She was very inhospitable. She was very blunt. She bluntly told her that it is inconvenient. "It is not convenient for me now. I can't see you another time." So she said that some other time. "Right now, I cannot see you. I don't have the time." She nodded and cautiously closed the door as though no one inside the house should be disturbed. She just moved ahead and carefully closed the door, as if she did not want anyone in the house to know about this visit, or she did not want anyone to be disturbed. I stood where I was on the step. The curtain in front of the bay window moved. Someone stared at me and would then have asked what I wanted. "Oh, nothing," the woman would have said. It was nothing. Now, the visitor, she stood at the step only. She must have been very surprised and taken aback by the behavior of this woman. And she could see that a curtain in front of the bay window moved. And someone stared out. Someone was curious to know who had come. And she thought that the woman must have told that, "Oh, it was nothing. No one was there." She did not want to tell anybody in a house about the visit. I looked at the nameplate again. Dorling, it said, in black letters on white enamel, and on the jamb a bit higher the number 46. She looked at the nameplate. It was written Dorling in black on white enamel, on white base, white paint, and on the jamb is a post, a pillar kind of a thing. A bit higher, the number was also written 46. As I walked slowly back to the station, I thought about my mother. Now, when she was walking back to the station, she was thinking about her mother, who had given me the address years ago. The mother had given her the address years ago. It had been in the first half of the war. I was home for a few days, and it struck me immediately that something or other about the rooms had changed. Now, she remembers, she recalls the days when she had visited her house for a few days, and she had found the rooms were seeming changed. Certain things were missing from the rooms. My mother was surprised I should have noticed so quickly. The mother was very surprised that the daughter had observed that certain things were missing. Then she told me about Mrs. Dorling. Then she had told her about Mrs. Dorling. I had never heard of her, but apparently she was an old acquaintance of my mother. Then she came to know that Mrs. Dorling was an old acquaintance. Her mother had known her long back, whom she hadn't seen for years. Then, for years, they were not in touch with each other. She had suddenly turned up. Now, during wartime, Mrs. Dorling had suddenly turned up and renewed their contact. She had renewed her relationship, her friendship with the visitor's mother. Since then, she had come regularly, and after that, she had visited their place regularly. Every time she leaves here, she takes something home with her, said my mother. The mother had informed her daughter that every time when she comes here, she takes some things with her. She took all the silver, table silver, in one go. In one go, at one time only, she took all the silver cutlery from their house. All and then the antique plates that hung there, and then the antique plates, the antique showpieces which were hanging on the walls. She had taken all of those. She had trouble lugging those large vases. She had trouble in carrying those large vases, and I'm worried she got a crick in her back from the crockery. The mother was so gentle. She was so worried about Mrs. Dorling. She said that she had so much trouble carrying the heavy bags that she must have even sprained her back while carrying that heavy crockery. My mother shook her head pityingly. She took sympathy. She was very sympathetic towards Mrs. Dorling. I would never have dared ask her. She said that she would not have dared to even suggest that she should take her things and keep them safe. She suggested it to me herself. She was so naive. She said that Mrs. Dorling suggested to her that she should give all her precious things to her. She even insisted, Mrs. Dorling had even insisted, she had even forced her mother that she should give all her precious things to her. She wanted to save all my nice things. The mother thought that she wanted to save her nice things, keep her nice things, which she would finally return when they come back. If we have to leave here and we shall lose everything, she says. Mrs. Dorling had told her that in case you had to leave this place, because the Jewish people were not treated well in the German ruled places. They were harassed, they were arrested. So many times the Jewish people had to flee. They had to run away from their places, leave their things and go away somewhere. So Mrs. Dorling had told her that in case you have to leave, all your things will be lost. So I will take them with me and I will keep them safe. Have you agreed with her that she should keep everything? I asked. The daughter was much wiser than her mother. She asked her mother that did you make it clear that she was going to keep the things, she was not going to take them, meaning thereby. As if that's necessary, my mother cried. The mother was so trusting, she did not even feel that it was necessary to make this clear to Mrs. Dorling. It would simply be an insult to talk like that. The mother felt that it would be very insulting even to imply such a thing or even to confirm such a thing with Mrs. Dorling. And think about the risk she is running. She even now was siding with Mrs. Dorling, speaking on her side, saying that just imagine the risk she was taking our things every time she came here. Each time she goes out of her door with a full suitcase or bag, each time when she leaves, she's taking a bag full. That's a big risk she's taking.